guys, welcome back to Break the Game podcast. We've got Kyle Frey, who is the director of digital marketing for MNRK Music Group. Some people know it as well as I did before this, MNRK. So if you've seen it around, it's actually pronounced Monarch. Kyle, thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I'm excited to talk.
Yeah, man, for sure. So just kind of the first question, and something we've asked everybody that comes on the podcast. Can you go a little bit into how you got started and what led to getting to this position?
Yeah, sure. So in total, I've been in the music industry for about 10 years now. I graduated from Five Towns College in Dix Hills out on Long Island, and I got my start as being a publicity and marketing intern for the company Entertainment One. And then I got hired as a marketing coordinator out of that internship. And so I came to MNRK Music Group about 5 years ago, and I've been the director of digital marketing for a little over 2 years now.
Okay, cool. Could you go into a little bit of what that role looks like?
Yeah, sure, of course. So as a director of digital marketing, I'm responsible for overseeing all of our marketing campaigns and initiatives through our different facets of the music side. So we have MNRK Urban, which handles rap and hip hop. We also have MNRK Heavy, which handles rock and metal. We also have different labels within our ecosystem like Last Gang. We also have Dual Tone. So I work primarily with MNRK Heavy. And I also oversee our e-commerce operations and work specifically within the department called MNRK Marketing and Commerce.
Okay, cool. So obviously digital marketing is kind of a critical aspect of promoting artists and music in today's music industry, especially with all the different platforms that are available. Could you go into a little bit of how digital marketing has changed over the years and some of the strategies you kind of use to take advantage of the broad audiences that are now what it is? Yeah,
totally. There's been a lot of evolution. I think one of the key points of that is that it's so hands-on now, looking at from a day-to-day campaign perspective. It's become very reactive to the fast-changing environment that we're in. Now it's a little more focused on adapting to constant changes and how to activate communities around that. And there's such a large focus on data and using analytics and how to apply those to campaigns.
Damn, I'm sure that's a lot of work, it sounds like.
Yeah, it definitely can be. But I mean, it's definitely fun. There's so many strategies to put in place just around everything with social media, just in terms of accomplishing that broader reach, everything building out around socials, an artist's brand, their aesthetic, cadence, how often they should be posting on TikTok, stuff like that. Email marketing has become so much more robust. Advertising is really very technical at this point in time, but still it goes such a long way.
Now, you mentioned email marketing. Do you feel like there's some success in email marketing, and is there a difference in success factors for SMS?
Yeah, definitely. So there's so much power in email marketing today, and that's definitely one of the most slept on areas, especially if you're developing up your own audience or fan base. Bands should definitely get more on board with collecting that data, getting those emails. It's your direct line of communication. And one of the best parts about that compared to SMS is that, you're not receiving an email notification. Well, unless you have notifications on, of course, but your email can be sent out and scheduled at times that make sense. SMS is a little more not to, I guess, word this incorrectly, but perhaps a little more invasive, where you're getting that directly to your phone in front of you. It's a text message that comes in, but email marketing is so strong for everything single rollouts, just basic communication, album pre-save. Just having that data is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you mentioned, you said invasive. I think that was the right word for that, because I feel like it's easier to capture emails than it is text message or, phone numbers. More people are willing to kind of just give an email that they use for everything else, versus their phone number, which is, like you said, a lot more personal.
Yeah, definitely. There's a big difference in receiving an email from a guitar brand giving you incentive to go purchase something than receiving an SMS campaign at 5:30 in the morning, waking you up, and
100%.
It's a different ballgame.
Yeah, absolutely. I use this. I don't personally use this. I've subscribed to this. It's called the Community, for Bert Kreischer, the comedian, and I think it's really cool. but I'm glad that they don't use it super often because I get 100 text messages a day as it is. So it's nice to kind of have a little bit of that connection. I might get one, and then I'm also subscribed to FlipTurn. They do SMS marketing for their band as well. Those are really the only two, and I was basically it's because I'm super fans. I
Yeah,
wouldn't
for
have
sure.
done it any other if it was just a band that I know. I wouldn't have done it because I don't really care that much.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, it's good to sign up, especially if you're doing marketing, just to see how other companies are rolling it out. Like,
Yeah,
there are a lot of major e-commerce brands in the music space that are, specialize in vinyl and stuff like that.
yeah,
So it's good seeing how they do it and how you can make it a little better yourself.
yeah, absolutely. So for people who are trying to get into the digital marketing side of the entertainment industry, what kind of skills, experiences do you recommend that they focus on developing?
That's a great question. You could break it down into like different technical skills and non-technical skills, and
Hmm.
being like technical skills, understanding and general knowledge of your core social platforms and DSPs, the ins and outs of those, your general like familiarity with analytics or analytical tools that are being used in the music industry,
Hmm.
how to digest those, understanding them, being able to like look at tracks data analysis and form a marketing campaign around that is really important. Knowledge of say like Google Analytics.
Hmm.
If people are familiar with Music Connect, Spotify for Artists is a big one that's used every single day, or Chart Metric. Um, in terms of non-technical skills, communication and organizational skills are invaluable. It's something that you're going to use every single day, and you'll need to effectively communicate detailed marketing plans and basically take something that looks complex on paper or inside of a marketing plan and be able to kind of dilute that and explain it in layman's terms, or be able to explain it to an artist that's like, cool, I get what we're trying to do here, but
Yeah,
what's the elevator pitch behind this or something like that. And
sure.
attention to detail is definitely incredibly important.
I could definitely see that. I feel like the attention to detail specifically, just because most people are going to notice those things, and that's the first thing they notice is when something is it's not was not given a lot of thought into.
Yeah, definitely, especially when you're sharing that with artist managers or any sort of management team. They'll know right away if you actually put the work into it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So speaking of different artists, you guys work with a diverse, and you've already mentioned this earlier, a diverse amount of artists. I know you said that you mainly work in the heavy side of things, but how do you tailor your digital marketing campaigns to different artists? Because obviously they all have different audiences and different brandings, and all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best parts about Monarch Music Group in general is how diverse the roster is, especially on the heavy side. I mean, everything
Hmm.
from like guitar gods, Zach Wild, Ace Frehley, to
Yeah.
up and coming exciting bands like the Calistab Boys and Escuela Grind.
Yep.
There's a ton going on there, and honestly, it starts with being able to identify the artist brand, their voice, their aesthetic, how they want to be presented to fans is crucial. Their visuals, messaging, the tone that's involved into it, everything from your average social post to advertising, and definitely understanding your genres and where your audiences are, where that
Mm.
crossover potential can lie. There's a big difference between death metal and putting out kind of like a radio rock record, and
Yeah.
where you're going to find those fans, knowledge of specific music scenes and where that average fan is, what they're into. That leads into a ton of different creative marketing. It's really just about audience building and know where they are. And then you can use all those facets to grow and continue to tell the artist story, which is the ultimate end goal.
Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. So the obviously with the different artists, they have, like you said, they have their own fans, they have their own kind of branding. um could you go into kind of a success story, I'm sorry, more or less, of how a well executed digital marketing campaign helped an artist's career?
Yeah, totally. Since I brought them up and they're, finding some serious success right now, it's the Callis Cowboys.
Yeah.
On top of being a director of digital marketing, also project manager to the Callis Cowboys, so I have a very
Oh, okay.
intimate look into their life cycle here at Monarch Music Group. And so they put out the record Celebrity Therapist. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's a
Yep.
Yeah, crazy
Yeah.
record.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That was a very exciting and fun album campaign.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the very start of it, it's quality music and it's all about that. Like it's very fortunate when you get in a record that is, truly incredible and you listen to it and you're kind of blown away by it. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
with that great record, there's that there's something special there. So you need to set that tone around an artist's strong. And in this case, they had really strong, stunning visuals and graphics. Everything
Yes.
from the album artwork, the singles that were picked, the video concepts that went around them, the vinyl that we manufactured, how we rolled out the vinyl, how we introduced a second pressing, and how we're planning, dropping future plans around the record once it hits its 1 year anniversary, which is September 2nd, and just general presentation and assets on socials. Another driving force of success behind that in general is just having the right team in place. You're pitching the right outlets, you have the right advertising, you're hitting the right audiences. Their management is great, their booking agent is fantastic. Everyone at the label has had such a hands-on approach just from an internal perspective. And at the very basis of this, you have a super hardworking band. They know what they want, they know how to lean in, and they know how to utilize a record label as a vehicle behind them. So all these things start to add up and they form this cohesive and well-planned album cycle, which has led them to fantastic touring opportunities. The album was received incredibly well by critics. It was on at least a dozen year-end lists for 2022. And I mean, it's just going up and up for them. It's seriously been such a ride.
I think it's really important as a band to have that kind of mentality a little bit of being able to know when to lean into things, how to use your tools around you, to kind of catapult you into success. And then of course, it comes with also having a good team behind you, as Monarch has. So it's kind of a perfect storm almost. It's you kind of need everybody to play their part. But I would also say that, if the artist wasn't playing their part, they may not be able to get into the position they want to get. And then maybe, the group that the label they're with may not want to push them as much anymore because they're not doing the due diligence and the efforts that are required as artists, because most artists feel like, when they get on a label, they're set. They don't have to do anything else anymore,
Yeah, spot on. It's definitely a relationship for sure.
Yeah. It's always got to be I'm using this as a platform to get to where I want to be.
Yes.
This isn't the end goal,
Exactly. Spot on. You nailed that.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So in relations to the different trends that come around, because obviously, an album, if you market a single, you market an album 1 year, 6 months, a year down the line, you may have to market it completely differently. How do you stay ahead of the curve when trying to create your marketing strategies and stay relevant?
That's a great question. It is such a rapidly changing environment, especially we're going through different resurgences and subgenres, and how do you cater to new fans that are entering that space? It's there's a lot going on there, but in general, just being aware of what's happening around you, following your peers, what they're doing, being hungry to innovate is really important too, and not just regurgitate the same marketing campaign that you used last time, or even following, the standard, like you were saying, drop a single, drop the pre-order, a record comes out, and then you're done. Yep. There's so much more involved into that, and staying away from that, that old head mentality of, oh, well, this is how we did it last time. This is how we've always done it. Or like, oh, I don't understand TikTok, so I'm not going to use it. You can't ignore your fans. And I'd say don't be afraid to take risks, try new things, but you need to be willing to learn from them and how to capitalize on them going forward, and collaboration between everyone from your different artists, your managers, your labels. Talk to your friends about cool things that they're working on. And then you start to, hear different technology that's available and how you can utilize that and what will cut through the noise. That's really it.
I think the talking to your friends thing is a really good piece of that, and not to say that anything else you said wasn't, but I think it becomes very easy to get kind of lost in your position, in terms of trying to separate what is going to work and what is not going to work.
Yep.
Because you have been in this position for so long, you've been doing it, you've been seeing it, it's been working, and then trying to make changes to adapt to, people, it becomes very, very hard because you've already got this, oh, well, I've been doing this for so long.
Hmm.
Why would I listen to anybody else? But I think listening to other people allows you to get a better perspective, an outside perspective looking in type of thing. Because otherwise it just, it becomes stagnant. It becomes like, oh, it's the same thing every time. And then
Hmm.
eventually you start kind of going down and down, you know?
Yeah, totally. And yeah, that's how you lose your fans. Like
Yep.
once it starts getting stale and nothing is, feeling unique anymore, that's that, like you said, it'll stagnate.
Yep. Absolutely. So the entertainment industry often kind of faces challenges related to piracy, copyright infringement. How does digital marketing play into that role a bit?
I think like fortunately it's gotten better as
Yeah.
technology has grown. It's easier to catch these things and avoid, getting copyright strikes or something like that.
Yeah.
By being cognizant of what you're posting, what you're using, if you have the green light to use it, or if you need clearance, if you're a younger artist that's sampling something, for example, like there's basic safe listing procedures that we have
Okay.
that we cover for all of our artists to make sure that if they're posting something on socials, they're not going to get hit with a copyright strike, or if they're uploading something to YouTube, they're safe to do so. They have the proper clearance.
Yeah.
And if you're having problems with that, like or anything with music on socials, like UGC goes such a long way where you can actually lean away from posting about your music or a hook and just have your user generated content talking about it or talking about something unique driving other people to your music on a streaming platform.
Yeah, I've heard issues, and I don't remember who specifically, but there was a particular artist who posted a kind of a tour recap video, and it had their song in the background, and they got flagged for copyright.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It happens really
Yeah,
frequently too. Wish it didn't have to be like that,
right.
but yeah, there. If you're definitely a part of a label ecosystem, there are ways of avoiding that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it like a YouTube just kind of auto flags it because I guess I don't really know how the YouTube machine works and trying to flag that stuff.
Sure, it's definitely super complex. I don't know like 100% all the intricacies that go into that, especially YouTube being able to monitor all those things. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely pretty
Because
wild.
I doubt somebody's just sitting by the computer and like, oh, got him.
Yeah, I don't think it's somebody's job to just sit there and watch like endless streams of content, double checking for legitimate usage of music.
Yeah, could you imagine that that was a job though? I mean, just listen to music all day for.
Now that you say it, that's not too bad.
Right, right. I guess that's kind of a music supervisor's role, you know?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So you went into this a little bit earlier, but I kind of wanted to dive a little bit deeper. The data analytics part of it.
Mhm.
How do you analyze the data and use those insights to optimize your marketing campaigns?
Yeah, totally. So being able to, like I mentioned Chartmetric earlier, that's one of the, I use that every single day.
Yeah.
Spotify for Artists too, of course. There's different tools like Song Stats and stuff. Being able to analyze these things will help you write and adjust your marketing campaigns and tackle your advertising in a much more efficient manner. Because especially with advertising, you're spending money. You want to spend that properly. You want to be able to optimize your advertising campaign based on data that you can digest. So
Yeah.
it will allow you, a platform like Chartmetric, for example, will allow you to see where there's active consumption, where fans are streaming, they're buying, they're listening to music, where they exist, what platforms they exist on. So you can see where they're at, and you could target them if you're looking close enough. You can build your marketing and ad campaigns using targeting, like I just said, and building out audience segmentation, making sure you're hitting the right people. It
Hmm.
makes it easier to see where you need to lean into different areas, or like paid versus organic, for example. Like there was there was a very specific example. Like 2 months ago, I was working on a campaign where I had realized that there's a lot of activity with Shazam on a specific artist that we have on our roster.
Hmm.
And I think it was the first time that anyone had sat back and been like, that's really interesting. Shazam, they obviously have that partnership with Apple Music. So it's like
Right.
maybe we could look into some potential growth there. maybe we could run a paid campaign that is specific to Apple Music fans, which you can also target inside of the Meta suite. So
Yeah.
your core understanding of data analytics, or they're going to help you identify that attribution, like what is working, what is turning into that consumption or streaming, and that will directly affect your audience growth, your fan engagement, and ultimately streaming and sales. Which, from a record label perspective, that's what we're going for.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you kind of want a little bit of the beginning. If you're kind of starting from nothing, starting from scratch, band creates this Facebook, creates their, TikTok, their Instagram, they connect it all together.
Hmm.
They create a pixel, and then they just start posting every day.
Hmm.
And then with that, every day they're starting to build their following, they're starting to build their demographics. At that point, once you've got the solid demographics, at that point you can actually start using the targeted
Yes.
audiences to be like, okay, well, let's boost a post over to TikTok, let's boost, or boost a video over to TikTok. Let's boost a post in Instagram because that seems to be going well for that one, So
Hmm.
does that kind of seem like the best strategy there from, or I'm sure I'm missing a few key components, but
No, no, that's a really great place to start. I mean, just to jump off of the point that you made about the pixel, it's incredibly important to have on your
yeah,
site. I mean, even a majority of artists in this day and age use have a link in bio solution. They have a smart link. You could
right.
put a pixel into that, so you know who you're hitting, what you're hitting, and that lives in the back end of Meta, and you can build out campaigns around that, which is fantastic. So no, that's a really great way to start going about that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's almost like you're building you're wanting to build a sponsor deck for an event.
Hmm.
You have to start looking at, your core demographics with the anticipation that you're going to be selling whatever this project to people,
Hmm.
saying, "Hey, this is why I think my group could do well in this market. Let's tour over there. Or, hey, this is why I
Yep.
think, we should get on a label to get to that next step. We just need a little bit of push because we've obviously got the core following here."
Yep. And to your point about touring specifically, I mean, if you can peek into your analytics of where your music is being streamed, like that could be like, wow, we have a really solid fan base in, Florida, or
Yeah.
even if you're a larger band looking to tour overseas and you see that there's a lot of traction and activity in the UK,
Yep.
that makes it all the more sense to look into touring
Some
overseas.
bands have more of a following in the UK than they do in the United States, and they use it,
Yep.
you know?
Hmm. Absolutely.
So, but, so when building and maintaining relationships, what do you do to kind of collaborate with other marketing professionals, artists, and different people who, in order to be able to achieve the marketing goals effectively? Because obviously you're going to need, like you mentioned, okay, well, this particular artist has a lot of Shazam searches.
Hmm.
Let's work with Apple Music to do this. Um, how do you do that? How do you, I guess, trying to word this right? How do you talk to other people to kind of get those marketing goals effectively done?
Yeah. So, obviously communication is key, and networking is such a large part of the industry. It's important to have a really dialed in inner circle and be out there and talking to everybody. And that's how you make those connections. And there's some important key holders in the music industry, whether that be on editorial staff at DSPs, or, hanging out and, oh, like, hey, there's a radio programmer for, Sirius XM or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Being able to communicate with all of these people and continue to tell that story for an artist is really important. And just the networking goes so far. If you're working at a record label, it's super important to maintain those communications with your artist managers, with your booking agents, so you know that everything is kind of flowing seamlessly. And that's how you start learning more and more about marketing, more and more about advertising, is just connecting with people, seeing what kind of campaigns they're working on, what artists they're working with.
Yep.
If you can add in any of that to your mix without ripping anyone's specific campaigns off, that's totally awesome.
Yeah. I think you made a good comment there too. Knowing who you're talking to is very important.
Hmm.
A lot of people just kind of see the title behind the name and they say, okay, well, this person is going to be best for me because they're higher up in the food chain.
Right.
But that may not necessarily be the case because they may have their own specific things that they're doing, but you may, want to work with somebody else that is in a lower tier in a completely different company. It's just
Hmm.
because it's the relationship that you're forming, and being able to talk to people and knowing what they're working with and who they're working for and artists that they managed in the past and, you know, um, artists that they've pushed and done successful with in the past, stuff like that is really important to know. And you wouldn't know that unless you were, actively communicating and doing some basic level of networking.
Yeah, of course. It's really important to be out there and being ingrained in the scene that you're in. That's how you start to meet all these people, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. You also mentioned the editorial playlist thing. I know there's a lot of artists
Hmm.
out there that are trying to figure out ways to kind of get onto the editorial playlist without having to kind of worry about, oh, well, it'll only happen if I'm X, Y, and Z.
Sure.
Are there certain things that they should be kind of focusing on to be able to get their best foot forward in with the potential of getting on an editorial?
Yeah, totally. Some of like the more interesting things about like we'll talk about Spotify specifically and how important algorithmic playlisting is.
Yeah,
And yeah, you want to land on all those editorial playlists. It's important. It's not the end all be all, but if you're not actively pitching your music weeks and weeks in advance without a concrete story behind it, you're doing yourself a disservice. That should be top focus when you deliver music, however you're delivering music, or whatever distributor you're using for it.
yeah,
Have a pitch. I've referenced, telling the story a bunch of times at this point. That's a real thing, like letting people know what about your music is unique, what it can be applied to, how it works on a playlist, what playlist you're interested in, your touring plans. It's all a big part of that. So focusing in and dialing that in will help you get a long way. And sure, you might not get added to, kick-ass metal or something like that, but
hmm
you can continue to try and pitch and seek out new opportunities by just getting your information in the back end of Spotify for Artists.
yeah. When you say pitch, do you mean like when you're uploading the song onto your DSP, and it asks you kind of an explanation of the song? Is that where that pitch would go?
Yes, 100%. So,
Okay.
yeah, like continuing to use Spotify as an example, the Spotify for Artists, the back end, the dashboard gives you an opportunity to pitch your song. Like, and
Yeah.
you could think of that as an elevator pitch where you pick out what genre it is, the subgenre, what vibe it is, where you're from, and then there's a detailed description that you could put in where you would put in all the additional information that we were just talking about. So that, yeah, that
Yeah.
in itself is definitely the pitch.
Do you feel like adding more beef to your Spotify account helps too? Like your linking your
Yep.
merch, getting your what is it called? The background
Artist
for
pick.
the background, all that stuff.
Hmm.
What is there a difference in like the photo versus video background, or do you think it's kind of effective both ways, or beefing all that up?
Yeah, totally. I mean, you should optimize your profile 100% across all DSPs, and
Yeah,
same thing with your socials. And other DSPs, they provide these tools and they want to see you use them. Stuff like setting your artist pick, uploading a canvas,
mm,
having your profile completely updated with your bio, your links to socials, like you were talking about, the background art,
yeah.
building out and curating this page to exactly what you want it to look like. Those are things that do get looked at, and they are important.
And it should also be important that they all are cohesive. They look the same versus
Yes, 100%. There's
just kind
strength
of
in aesthetic, man.
right, exactly. Just kind of throwing, oh, this one looks cool. We'll just do this one too.
Yeah, like it can be confusing too as a fan. Like just thinking about it from a fan perspective and
Yeah.
taking yourself out of your own shoes. Like
Yes.
you go to four different artist profiles, whether that be on Instagram, TikTok, or Spotify or Apple Music, and everyone's got a different profile picture. One's a zoomed in, completely uncropped version of like the band's logo, and then the other one is an old picture where three members aren't in the band anymore. It gets
Yeah.
confusing.
Yep. Absolutely. And then
Yeah.
the cropped thing is really important because
Yes.
a lot of people don't pay attention to that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
It's you have to really like tone in on this stuff because otherwise, like you said, it's going to look confusing for the fan. And then that's what I was kind of getting at earlier with the job part of it for the industry side is the
Hmm.
ability to kind of step back as a fan and realize all the different components that are going into this on a fan perspective.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's really hard to do that for a lot of people, especially when you've been doing it for so long in the same way, and you're on one end of it for so long. I mean, it's complicated, but it's important. And I feel like going to local shows, and talking to people, linking with people on online, and
Mhm.
having that sort of community manager, for the band too, would help as well
Totally.
in that regards, right?
Yep, I agree. There's so much strength in community. Like, you watch so many. There's a pretty healthy local metal scene going on in like Brooklyn. There has been for a long time.
Yeah.
Like different areas of Long Island, like with Long Island's rich history of hardcore bands, and the community is seriously, it's something special. And like bands that are utilizing community facing tools like Bandcamp, for example, is incredible for community building.
Yeah.
There's a community tab on Bandcamp, and people take pride in going to Bandcamp and buying the digital version, which, like, yeah, people still do that.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but
It is. Yeah.
like Reddit too is another great example of just community
Yes.
building and how important it is to be engaging and interacting with your fans.
Yeah. I don't remember who I was talking to the other day. It was I'm blanking on it. But anyway, he was mentioning that there's a lot of platforms that musicians aren't taking advantage of, and one of them was OnlyFans, and then the other one was like
Interesting.
Patreon. Yeah, yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Which it was an interesting perspective, but he kind of put it in a sense that, like, okay, well, you're able to actively reach everybody in your audience with a Patreon
Hmm.
or an OnlyFans, because you're getting actual subscribers.
Right.
Where when you post it, everybody sees it.
Hmm.
Versus, with Facebook or Instagram, or, you may not see it even though you're following them. You could
Of
scroll
course.
for a
Yeah.
half hour and still not see it. And it allows you to be able to close that gap a little bit. And I think part of it is because of the fact that most people aren't on these platforms for artists. They're on for
Yeah.
different reasons. So they may not have that same stretch of content that they would have in your
Hmm.
Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, etc. So it was definitely, yeah, interesting
For
perspective.
sure. Yeah, I
Um,
mean,
yeah,
when you post on Facebook, you're only reaching a certain percentage of your fan base, but if you
yeah,
send an email, that's going out to your full subscriber list.
yeah. Oh, it was Trevor Swenson. That's who it
Trevor
was.
Spencer. Okay,
Yeah, that's who I was
nice.
talking to. Yeah. And of course, he's got a very unique perspective on marketing too, because I mean, he brought on K-pop industry too. So that
Yeah,
was,
that's awesome.
yeah. um, so in terms of the entertainment industry, it can
Mhm.
be very competitive, very fast paced. Do you have any advice for somebody who is trying to get into the industry, and succeed in roles that are close to yours?
Totally. Going back to what we were just talking about getting out there. The golden rule of the music industry that I feel not too many people often talk about is be a good hang. Like,
Yeah,
go out there and be personable, be willing to make connections. That serves as your foundation. Your inner circle is just like that should be built up of people that you trust, people
yeah,
that are preferably smarter than you, that are going to have better ideas, and that's
yep,
where you can start pulling inspiration from. It's helpful to define what your interests and what your passions are, and just get involved. Like we were talking about, go out to those shows, explore those communities, like online or in person.
yeah,
If you're still in school and you're looking to break into it, their schools have different career centers that can look into different options for internships. Like that's how I got started, and that's still a very viable way of breaking into it.
yeah, absolutely. Um, as the director of digital marketing, typically collaborate with artists and teams regularly. Can you share a memorable experience where the synergy between the marketing and artistic vision? I mean, you kind of touched about this on when you're artists, but
Mhm.
do you got another success story in the brain?
I do actually, yeah. So I was fortunate enough to work very closely on the Death Row Records 30th anniversary campaign.
That's cool.
Yeah, Monarch Music had actually owned Death Row Record before Monarch was Monarch. It was Entertainment One. Before that, it was Koch. So we had actually owned Death Row Records for quite a while.
Now Snoop
And
owns it.
so, yes, yeah,
Yep.
which is full circle, man. That's
Yeah,
so
it
wild.
is.
But yeah. Anyway, we worked. So I worked on a team full of incredibly talented people celebrating the 30th anniversary of Death Row, and it was an entire year-long marketing campaign where we built out their first ever e-commerce store. That was like one of the first bigger entries of D2C for our business, which
Mhm.
was super cool. We played a role in revamping the label's branding around the 30th anniversary, introduced a bunch of new vinyl represses, cassettes, merch items, different spreads for everything, and worked with a ton of talented artists around building out an interactive Web3 space for Death Row that had, this virtual museum that you could go inside and look through different like relics and factoids and like find Easter eggs that all pertain to like this crazy legacy that Death Row has.
Yeah.
There was a ton of work around NFTs at the time when that was really taking off. Event marketing that we did, different brand partnerships with fashion stores, and to get to like the essence of the question, there was a ton of synergy between our marketing team, our creative team, and what like the artistic vision of the brand was. And it was a challenge because it's like, Death Row is a legacy brand. Like they're known for like that is West Coast hip hop, and that we need to do something that honors that continues to stay true to its legacy, but also brings it forward into this like new and exciting area that the brand itself has never been in. And it was really successful. The marketing campaign, we got nominated for a Libera Award, and
Nice.
I think
Congrats.
was also recognized. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We were also recognized by Music Ally for, it was one of the best campaigns in 2021 that had a heavy focus in NFTs, which at the time was pretty cool.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, about the NFTs things. Have you felt there was success in it? I mean, do you still use it?
To answer the first part of the question, yeah, there was definite success in it at that point in time, just because of when we were rolling that out. That was at the very height of NFT popularity. I do think that there can be success in it, but I think the music industry might be. I could be wrong in saying this is just my own personal opinion, but like it's a little far off from it making sense. Whereas like fans are kind of hesitant to jump into that. There's a general like a bit of a negative association around it, but there are brands like Revolver does their Icon series with vinyl really well, and that was a pretty cool idea they set forward. But there's power in blockchain. There's a lot of cool things that you can do with it. I just think maybe for right now, specifically pertaining to the music industry, it's a little far off from coming back and, I don't know, I guess providing independent artists with lanes of success.
Sure, absolutely. One of the things that Randy Nichols,
I love Randy.
Yeah, Randy's great. He does that he was talking to me about was, or he did with the Under Oath album, was provide an NFT with the album, which I thought was a really cool way to do it, because it wasn't like you were forcing NFTs down somebody's throat. You were just kind of like, hey, here's something you were looking for, but here's an additional thing as well. So that way it kind of like gets people to dip their toes into the NFT world a little bit and
for sure
get a better understanding of what the potential is behind it, and what the cool things you can get with it, and I thought that was a very cool way of doing it.
I agree. Yeah. Under Oath has always had a really like progressive stance in terms of just marketing and super unique ideas. Under Oath is also on Monarch Heavy.
Yep. They just
stoked to be
got on, right?
Yeah, we signed them earlier this year.
Yeah, congrats.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's been amazing working with them, and Randy too. He's a fantastic manager.
He is
very forward thinking.
Yep.
And yeah, to your point, like it's a good way to dip your toes into it. It's a great added value item, and it's introducing people to just to a concept that maybe they didn't quite understand, but they have this like vinyl, for example, a tangible thing where they can scan it and bring it to something else. It's like, okay, cool. I kind of understand this now. Like that, I got excited behind this, and I'm open to learning more about it.
Right. It's like the age old, in terms of marketing, less is more. You know what I mean?
Yes. 100%.
Yeah. So, and that's the same thing with like, trying to get subscribers, get demographics. If you can provide the option for somebody to sign up for things with as few steps as possible, they're more likely to
Yes,
do it.
100%. Yeah. It's got to be easy to use, and some sort of, incentive for you to give up your part, zero party data.
Yeah,
It's got to be worth it.
absolutely, absolutely. So on the avenue of streaming, obviously there has been, and you kind of mentioned a little bit too, that you were surprised that people were still paying for songs and
Hmm.
albums. With the rise in streaming services, decline of physical album sales, how has this shift kind of affected the way that you do your marketing approach and to engage with fans?
That's a great question. So, I mean, just to start at the top, it's affected it. There's just so much oversaturation, and
Yes.
you got to cut through the noise. That's what the competition essentially is.
Yeah.
There are more avenues and connection points now than ever before, and that's a positive thing because you have virtually unlimited ways of connecting and engaging with your audiences, especially through streaming. But one of the best ways to go about it is authenticity.
Mm.
Fans want to know about you, who you are, what your interests are, what you're like off stage. Of course, it's not to discredit like mystery behind things but unless you're, kind of like Sleep Token or like Taylor Swift or something,
Yeah.
like, mysticism only gets you so far. But
Sure.
people love relatability, and if you can work that into your marketing, we talked about UGC earlier.
Mm.
It's super important. People like seeing that, and if you can adapt your social media presence to this, continue using UGC, you show people that you're actually there, you're in it, and people get they're generally more excited about that, and allows you to continue investing your time in community growth, building that out, and identifying where your fans are and how you need to target them.
Yeah. And speaking of community growth, in terms of influencer marketing,
Mm.
um, is that a strategy you use? And if it is, how do you leverage influencers and brand partnerships to promote music?
That's a great question. So yeah, we have done a fair share and still do a good amount of influencer marketing. And this is all like that and partnerships. It's all about amplifying your reach to wider audiences. There's a barrier for entry for this in terms of price tags. Some are lower, some are much higher. But you're having a name tied to your art, so you want to make sure that it makes sense. And you can best do that by looking at like what's an influencer's typical audience look like? What are their interests? Does their previous content make sense for the kind of music that you're trying to market? And if you can do that and kind of evaluate like your art, your music, and if it will make sense to service it to their fan base, then it's something that you should utilize. If you don't, then don't go for it, because
Mm-hmm.
it can lead to kind of like low conversions. For example, like we've done some that have been crazy successful, others that were not so much. And that's kind of like, the typical experience of working with influencers. Like you don't want to hit up a fashion and beauty influencer to market a, deathcore record, for
Right.
example.
Yeah.
It's got to make sense. Like it's got to really work out, and fans or the people that follow the influencer, they kind of need to know about you already. If like a lot of people are watching an influencer for a specific reason,
Yeah.
and typically when you bring on like sponsored content, and nowadays like it's always presented as sponsored content, or at least something is mentioned that it's sponsored. So people have a habit of skipping forward through that. So
Yeah.
if you're going to go down that avenue, your content should be great, your music should be great and make sense.
Awesome. Cool. So I got one more question, and then
Sure.
that'll wrap up this. Are there any? And we talked about NFTs a little bit before. Are there any kind of other emerging technologies or trends in the digital marketing that you're excited about, and you believe that might have a significant impact on the entertainment industry?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it actually, this is a great question just to kind of start tying it like all together.
Yeah.
Higher quality data ingestion methods, like we were talking about, you want to sign up for things, you got to make it worth it. If the lifeblood of digital marketing is your data retention or data acquisition, how are you doing that in a unique way? Like there are super intuitive and awesome giveaway platforms. Like I use Gleam all the time when we're running giveaways for different bands to do everything from a merch package to elevated like side stage meet and greets. We've done flyaways to shows and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Things that fans actually can take an experience away from, and how you create an experience around getting data is super important. You can also apply that to something like a pre-release campaign where you can sign up early to hear a track a few days in advance. Like that's a really cool and instantly rewarding thing for a fan to take part of. Outside of just giveaway platforms, I think like there's a lot happening in the QR, the NFC space.
Mm-hmm.
Different ways of engaging with fans at event marketing where you can tap to enter something right away, or you can vote for whatever song comes next in the set list or something like that. There's companies that are out there that are already utilizing these things, and it's super exciting to see where that's going to go. And I feel like it'd be remiss if we don't talk about AI a little bit.
Absolutely.
There's so much to. It's a tool and everyone should use it. Like AI in the creative and marketing space, there's a lot to be explored there. I'm excited to see what comes out because even for your average marketer, like we've all got to write copy at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And man, does AI really help with that?
Yeah,
And especially machine learning and data analytics too. There's such a rich future there of being able to have some sort of predictive data telling you and showing you where trends are going to go and how you can apply your marketing and advertising to take advantage of that.
Absolutely. Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on and unloading your wealth of knowledge on us. I'd love to have you back on again, and we can maybe do some deep dives into specifics on certain things, like maybe doing a whole other episode on AI. I think that would be cool.
That'd be so much fun.
Yeah, heck yeah, dude. I love AI, so I think we could talk for hours on that. So
for sure.
Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is great.